Normalizing the stigma behind mental health, one conversation at a time. Up next on Carpe Diem. Hello and welcome to Raw Reality, a special edition of Carpe Diem. I'm your host, Amanda Eustice, and today several strong women have chosen to speak up and share their experiences in hopes that mental illness becomes more than just a label. We are about to meet three young women who will share with you the triggers which contributed to the escalation of their struggles. Let's hear their stories now.
My name is Megan. I'm 21.
My name is Carly Tomesco. I'm 21 years old.
My name is Julia Pagano. I'm 22 years old.
And I struggle with anxiety,
OCD,
Depression,
PTSD,
an eating disorder,
body dysmorphia,
and a mood disorder.
Before second semester freshman year ended, which was in 2016, over spring break I had to go back to Connecticut. During that break, it was probably the second day, and my mom called me on the couch, and she wanted to tell me something that was gonna basically break my heart. She told me she had breast cancer, which was found all the way in the lymph nodes, and we didn't know how fast it was spreading or anything. I automatically went to, is it my fault?
Around the age of 15, I started struggling with substance abuse, and my anxiety really took off from there. I ended up staying home from school due to the overwhelming anxiety and irrational thoughts that ran through my brain all the time, every day. When I woke up, my first thought would always be, what if I get shot today? What if I walk out the door and I get shot? What if a plane crashes into the high school? What if? My thoughts were never at rest.
The root of my problem, I was in denial of that for a long time, and I couldn't even say it to myself because I was so ashamed of it. When doctors or psychiatrists or therapists, when they would ask me why I've been feeling this way, they'd be like, oh, is it school? Is it stress at home? Is it something? I wouldn't give an answer because the answer was my sexuality, and I couldn't even say the word gay. I hated myself. I was so ashamed. I was terrified to talk to anybody about it. I felt like I had to hide who I was.
So she was diagnosed in February, so the day, a few days after Valentine's Day. So she went into her first chemo treatment in March. We have a system now where my dad will text me 911 if there's an emergency. So I have to call right away. He texted me 911. It was very late at night. I was in bed, so I didn't get to see the message until I woke up. So once I woke up, I immediately called, and it took him a while to say something to me because he didn't want to say anything because he knows how close my mom and I were. He then told me that, Mom isn't gonna make it.
I chose drugs and alcohol over professional help. I did see a therapist at the time, but I would go to her drunk or high and basically lie my way through the whole session.
I resorted to keeping everything inside, and I took it out on myself in the form of eventually an eating disorder and other physical ways to self-destruct. That's how I dealt with it, because in my head, self-harming is a way to control something because you're out of control with the rest of your life.
I got that feeling that this was gonna be something that's gonna be an image forever in my head. I can't escape from this. Her last words were, I love you. So that constantly plays in my head.
After these young women identified the roots of their struggles, they realized the importance of taking the first step to seek professional treatment. Before we continue with Megan, Carly, and Julia's recovery stories, let's hear from two professionals, Dr. Jacqueline Friedman Lombardo and licensed social worker Samantha Finley, in order to gain some professional insight.
I think that people are concerned about being judged and being misunderstood as someone who's crazy or unwell.
I feel like society nowadays makes people kind of think that if something's not okay, if you're not feeling right, that there's something wrong with you, like that's not allowed, that everybody has to be positive and vibrant and all of these things that make us feel bad when we're feeling bad in a way that makes us not want to seek help.
At first, going into treatment, I did view it as a negative experience. I did not want to tell anyone. And many people think that people struggling want attention. No, it is totally the opposite. I did not want anyone to know I was struggling, and I viewed treatment as like I lost a battle. I viewed treatment as, now I have to be vulnerable, now I have to deal with what I'm thinking about.
I never refused help, but I also thought to myself that I shouldn't get help because I always thought that I was an untreatable case. I would refuse the fact that I was actually in need of somebody.
Therapy isn't something to be afraid of. Sometimes it's just sitting down and venting, talking out what's going through, or just helping yourself process what it is that's going through your mind, because that's usually where it comes from. We don't know how to process these things. We're so focused on the physical. Everyone's always focused on, I need to look good, I need to do this, but we ignore the mind.
When I realized that I needed help and I needed to start taking myself seriously, I took a step back and I stopped taking the drugs, stopped drinking every night. I realized that maybe I should stop lying to my therapist. Maybe I should go in there and be selfish and take care of myself.
To this day, I'm still in therapy, and it's something I look forward to now because I've become so comfortable with my emotions and with what I'm dealing with and with myself. So this whole entire process has transformed from something mortifying to something really crucial and positive.
I feel like when people can have more honest discourse with one another, and people can be honest about kind of how they're feeling, and that every day is not a great day. There are times when people do experience low mood or difficult times of their life. And I think that the more people share with one another, the more it normalizes it and also gives people the opportunity to realize, okay, I'm not alone in this, I'm not crazy. Other people are struggling as I am. And that is something that we can really talk about, and kind of normalizes the idea of having difficult times and also seeking support when that happens.
I think that normalizing the, talk of mental illness will help people understand all you need is someone to talk to. All you need is someone to hear you out.
If we as a society can come together and embrace getting help and making it more accessible and more available and more normalized, there will be significant changes for the better.
A lot of what I come across are those who think like, we'll just stop thinking about it, or, you're depressed, we'll just smile more, or it's not that simple. There's chemical imbalances, or there's reasons why a person's feeling a certain way, and it's not that cut and dry where it's like, we'll just stop. Clearly they can't just stop, otherwise everybody would.
You just don't know what a person's going through.
I view every day now as what I would have missed had I not gotten help, or had I ended my life, had I followed through with any plans. And I think it's really powerful to think of life that way.
I can't see myself alive if I didn't go to therapy and I didn't help myself and I didn't find myself help. I think I would be dead. I really do.
According to a study done by Cambridge University, approximately 60% of people who suffer from a mental illness are not being treated at all. Now think about it this way. If someone broke their arm, they would receive medical treatment right away, and a cast would be put on it. With that being said, why should a mental illness be treated any different? With us now, we have mental health advocates Samantha Renfree and Kara Constantine. Thank you both for joining me.
Of course.
And us on this show. Now, Kara, I'm going to start with you. Tell me, what was your medical diagnosis and what are some of the struggles that you've gone through and are possibly still going through today?
Sure. So I was diagnosed with bipolar 1. It's partially hereditary. My mom suffers from it, so luckily I kind of knew what the warning signs were going into it. That definitely didn't make it any easier though. It's kind of an ongoing struggle. Right now it's kind of under control. You know, you have to go to therapy, you take medication every day, but there's definitely days where it is a lot worse than others.
And you said you do go to therapy, or?
I go to therapy as needed.
Okay.
Definitely when I was first diagnosed, I was going a lot more frequently, but it's a very expensive thing to go to therapy once a week. So right now it's kind of cut back to when I really feel like something is coming on and when I really feel like it's going to turn into a bigger issue, I will seek out more help than just the medication.
And how often is that? How often would you normally go, or?
I would love if I could go once a week. I was definitely my happiest and definitely felt the most in control of my life when I was able to go once a week. Right now I'll go maybe once a month, every other month.
Okay. Now, Sam, what about you? What was your medical diagnosis? And still to this day, what are some of the struggles you go through?
So I was diagnosed with bulimia nervosa and depression at the same time. I think it really came from when I was little and my dad passed away. I started internalizing a lot of the stuff that was going on, like lack of control and not feeling like present all the time. And you know, grief is such an ongoing process, and like they always say that every developmental milestone you hit, like you re-experience grief, and I definitely think that that's still something I deal with a lot. Like sometimes when I became an adult, like graduated college, like those things come back up. So that's something I definitely still continue to deal with, but I am thankful enough to be at a university that does provide free counseling services, so I do take advantage of that. So I still go to therapy probably about every other week, especially to deal with managing school stress and, you know, all these different things that are still going on.
Now, both of you brought up this really important conversation of just getting professional help when needed or if it's prescribed, right? So when did you realize maybe I need to start seeking professional treatment?
I think there was definitely just a point where I had to be really honest with myself and kind of look at myself and be like, this is not okay. Like, this is not who I am. I don't feel like myself, and it's going to get way worse if I don't do something about it. And then from there, it kind of turns into the struggle of, okay, I don't know how to find a therapist. I don't know what I'm supposed to be looking for, what kind of doctor I need to find. I don't know who takes my insurance. I don't know any of that. You know, at the time I was 18, 19 maybe, and you know, it's all words you hear like, oh, just go get help, but it's really not easy. And then from there, once I was able to find the help, I mean, it's an ongoing thing.
Sam, what about you? When did you realize you needed to seek medical and professional treatment?
Yeah, I really identify with what you're saying of there's that moment you have where you just have to be honest with yourself, where I think there came a point where it was like, I have to make this decision, like, is this how I want to live the rest of my life? Like, this isn't what I want, and like, this is eventually, like, could really harm me.
It's definitely a really scary moment too, to kind of have to take stock of yourself and recognize that you don't know who you are anymore.
Yeah, and there was that part for me that I was like, I identified so much with my like mental illness that I was like scared to give it up too. Like, this is how I'd been. This is like such a huge part of me. Like, knowing that I need help also means that like I'm gonna lose this part of me.
Well, now both of you going to seek professional treatment, there's this stigma behind it, right? Once you go there, maybe things don't turn out the way that they want to go, or we see it how it's in the movies, right? So now going to them and having therapists speak to you and you guys tell them your stories, has it helped? Has it benefited? I know you said it's helped you.
It's definitely helped, but it took me a really long time to get to a point where it helped. When I first started going to therapy and taking medication, it was very much, I didn't want to do this. I would go to my therapist and, like people were saying earlier, I would straight up lie to my therapist, and it's just not helpful at that point. And then in terms of medication, you know, it's very difficult to find one that works for you, so going on and off different medications constantly is the worst thing in the world. It would get to the point where I would try it for 3 days, maybe a week if I was lucky, and if I didn't see an immediate effect, I was like, oh, this isn't working, and I would stop, and that's not helpful at all.
Yeah, Sam, now going to therapists, do you have a different impression on them?
Oh, definitely. But it is such a process. Like, I thought when I got there that I was like, okay, it's going to be like a few months, like, like everything's going to be fine. But it's such a long process to get help and, to actually feel better and to learn how to like live with all these things.
I think that's one of the frustrating things too, to get to the point where you're like, okay, I will get mental help. And then to get, okay, I found a therapist, I'm willing to take medication. And then to still not feel like it's paying off immediately is very frustrating. At least for me it was.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. And a big thing for me too was having to like tell people that I was going to seek help. Because when I first went for help, I ended up like having to take a break from college. Like I had to move home. Like I had all these other things. And I remember being like, how do I even tell my roommate that like I'm leaving? And like, this is the reason why. How do I tell my brothers I'm coming home? And that was something that really having a therapist was really good for me for, because I was lying to her about everything else, but I was being honest about like my fears of telling people. And like, that was the first step for me being able to like actually be truthful to her and get the most of what I needed out of her.
Yeah. Well, it's actually the same way. I straight up freshman year just left halfway through the semester. I didn't even tell my roommate. I just left. She texted me. She's like, oh, did you move out all your stuff? I was like, about that. I'm not coming back. And I transferred schools.
Yeah,
it's hard.
Well, you mentioned that the school offers a lot of help. Do you feel that it should be more accessible to students, whether they be on campus or off campus?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even for what I go for now, I mostly go for just my school stress. Like every once in a while, something else will come up that's related back to what I originally sought treatment for. But even just the day in and the day out things, to have that accessible to students, there's so many transitional things that happen when you're in that age that I think it should be, and it's free, and it should be free to all the students.
Now, you brought up a really good conversation about the cost of going to therapy and medicine and things like that. Do you feel, again, like this should be accessible, regardless of in terms of medicine and therapy? Do you think?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah?
There is absolutely no way that I would still be here if I didn't seek therapy and professional help from that. I think a lot of universities really have the right idea where they do offer free services, but once you're out of university or if you're unable to work with the kind of schedule they have, it becomes a really hard struggle to get help from there.
Now, there's this stigma around mental health just in general. What do you say to those people to kind of educate them or inform them on what's going on with your personal lives or how people are feeling within a moment where you might not know they're going through something, but you want to help them? We'll start with Kara, yeah.
I think it's really, really hard for anyone to be like, I need help. So anytime I'm in a situation where someone is reaching out to me and saying that, the first thing I do is encourage them, especially if they have access at their university, go talk to someone. I wish that someone had told me that years ago. I wish that I had done it a lot sooner. And I know that me telling them that isn't enough, because when I was in that situation, people were telling me the same thing. And I was like, oh, it's fine. If it gets worse, I'll get to that. And therapy has definitely been the most helpful thing right now for me and in the past and going forward. So anytime someone comes with that, that's definitely the first thing I say. But also, if you can't go to therapy or you don't want to go to therapy, you have to be able to reach out to people around you that are going to be able to help. You have to know who your support system is, and you have to be able to trust them. You have to be able to trust them and be able to openly talk about your struggles and what you're going through so that they can help to the extent that they can. But of course, that's no replacement for a medical professional, especially if it's something very serious, which it often is.
Sure. Well, you said, you have this support system. Who do they consist of? Who's your support system that you go to?
I definitely have a few friends that I'm very close with that are able to be that kind of support system, whether they've gone through something similar themselves or if they have family members that have gone through something similar. It's very nice to be able to talk openly about it without feeling like there's that stigma. There's a lot of people where if they straight up asked me, I would not tell them anything about it at all. I would lie essentially if I have to, just because I don't want to have to play the guessing game of, okay, how is this person going to react to me saying this? Are they going to see me differently? Are they going to take my actions differently? And, that's one of those things too. You have to be able to be comfortable with that. At this point in my life, I'm okay with the fact that I'm bipolar. I know it's not something I'm ashamed of, but I also know that I don't really owe it to anyone to explain it if I choose not to, which is great. But definitely having that support system is something that's very helpful, where I feel empowered enough to be able to do that.
Now, Sam, you were nodding your head the entire time she was talking.
Yes.
Did you want to add on that?
Especially with not everyone deserves to know. I think that is so true. That was something that I've put a lot of thought into because there's always times where I'm like, am I just being ashamed of it because I don't want to tell this person? And I kind of struggled with like finding that line between maybe I just don't trust this person and being ashamed of what's going on with me. But choosing not to tell somebody is also just as freeing as choosing to tell somebody sometimes. Like, it's still taking control of it. So I definitely agreed with that.
Now, in terms of the public understanding mental illness and mental health, right? How should we educate them? Do you know of a way where we can let people know this is how, maybe somebody's going through something and this is how you could be able to help them or work them through a situation where you are now able to understand the other side of what they're going through? What do you think, Kara?
I think you definitely have to be able to you have to be able to speak freely with your friends and your family members. If you see them acting differently than they usually do, you should be able to comfortably go up to them in a way that makes them feel safe and like they're being heard and seen and say, hey, I've noticed that, you're sleeping a lot more lately, or you seem really stressed out. Is something going on? Do you want to talk about it? I don't think you ever have to outright ask them, oh, are you super depressed right now? Is what's going on? But I think being able there and offering them that ear to listen is definitely the first step you can take to help. Going off that, we talk a lot about the stigma. It goes really back to just how you're talking about people and how you're treating people that have a mental illness. I know it was a lot easier for me to speak to friends and family members who I knew previously had said things that I agreed with about mental health, whether it be related to therapy or medication or just someone they knew, versus people that I had seen act a certain way towards other people with these illnesses.
And how would they act?
I think that there's definitely just this kind of, that face they make or something they'll say, those kind of snide comments or remarks, just small things like that make someone with a mental illness kind of feel like I'm not welcome here. This is not something I'm allowed to be a part of because I'm struggling. And
it's in part because they don't understand, right? So definitely. How do you think we should educate the public, or are there programs out there that you may know of letting other people know symptoms or things like that to look out for?
Yeah, I think that one of the biggest things is just getting the information out there. I feel a lot of it just comes from people not being aware of what mental illness really is and how it presents. There tend to be, I think, these common ideas of how someone who's struggling with something mentally is going to seem or going to act, or people think it can't be her, it can't be him, not my friends, it wouldn't be my son, it wouldn't be my daughter. So I think also there's a normalizing piece to it, that these people aren't alone, they're just people too, they're just going through things. So I think there's a lot of just having those kinds of conversations, making it not a bad word or a charged word to say depression or anxiety or PTSD or mental illness as a whole, schizophrenia, it's making that part of a normal conversation is, I think, the best way to start this.
Sure. Now, trying to break down this stigma and these barriers, we also have a lot of past events in history. For example, the shooting at Parkland, right? The Parkland shooting at Majority Stoneman Douglas High School. They said that basically he had a mental illness, or there was a mental health going on, something going on there, right? What does that say to people that are going through certain symptoms, right? So like you mentioned before, oh, maybe they're sleeping too long, or oh, are you depressed, or anxiety, things like that. Are we just putting and giving other people this kind of easy way out, saying that they have a mental health problem, or what do you guys think?
I think situations like that are definitely tricky. I don't think you should be ruling out that someone has, a mental health issue, but I think to imply that the reason that they do something is simply because of that is almost uneducated. I think that something as serious as that, a lot of factors go into, and that is one of the things that I mentioned before, where people kind of jump immediately to that, and then I feel very much I'm going to keep my mouth shut because I don't want people to think of me in relation to something like that, because I know that I'm not like that, but they might not, just because of their lack of experience with issues like that.
Well, that's what they said. Mental health was a factor, right?
mental health is always a factor. Like, I feel like when they say things like that, it kind of heightens the stigma around mental illness as a whole. Like, even if they knew what was going on with him, or anyone who does act out violently when they're going through something, if they even like put, I guess, a diagnosis with it, I feel like they could still educate more about different diagnoses and different warning signs or different possible courses of these things, instead of just saying, this is what mental illness does, like this is the factor of it, because that's not what it is.
Now turning the page with both of you, if you were approached, either of you, by somebody who is going through either similar struggles or something different, what advice would you give to them or let them know about either your struggles previously or still upcoming now?
Well, the first thing is definitely that you're not alone. Mental illness affects way more people than we think. And that is something that I've definitely learned as I've become more open with it. You know, if I share, oh, you know, I'm going through this, this, and this, people are a lot more likely to be like, oh, you know, like I actually am too, or my sister, or, you know, my mom, something like that. In terms of advice, definitely it goes back to the support system. If you don't have people you can talk to, you have to find someone you can talk to, whether that be professional or all of the various hotlines that they have that you can reach out to. And then just from there, definitely get help. Like you said previously about the broken arm, you wouldn't tell someone not to put a cast on it. Mental illness is very serious. You should be getting professional medical help for it if you feel like you need it.
And Sam, what would you say to somebody?
I think the "you are not alone" part is really important to make someone feel heard, and like it's always very isolating when you're in these kinds of moments. But I think I would also just tell them, like, it's a long process and it might not always seem it, but it is so worth it to get help. Like, it really is. And I know there are going to be times where it doesn't seem like that and it seems like it's just easier to give up on working on yourself, but it is so worth it in the end.
Definitely. What did you get out of it?
Out of getting help?
Yeah,
I got
just
myself.
working on yourself. Yeah,
I got myself. I got to know myself. I got to even get more out of the relationships I was having. I got to be more present in my life, and I don't think I would be where I am now if I didn't get the help that I did a few years ago.
I don't think either of you would be either. But thank you so much for joining us on Carpe Diem. If you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health, you can call 1-800-950-KNOW-ME, and you can also email them at info@knowme.org. If you would like more information about mental health or any other edition of Carpe Diem, you can write to us on the email address on your screen, carpediem@mail.montclair.edu, or call us at 973-655-5158. For Carpe Diem, I'm Amanda Eustice. Thanks for watching.